Hello everyone, my name is Maciej Nowak and welcome to the Awesome to Know podcast where we discuss all things related to building your website. In this episode we talk with Cheryl Salazar, a partner at the Partner Marketing Group, where she focuses on helping tech corporations and their partners implement marketing strategies. For me it was a fascinating conversation about challenges the enterprise tech companies face when talking to their customers. We talked about messaging and positioning and what to do to reach your customers with your content. We also talked about typical buzzwords that make your website look like everyone else and some positive examples of consistency in culture and messaging of the company. If you don't want to miss new episodes and keep learning about building great websites, subscribe to Awesome to Know newsletter at awesomestudio.com/newsletter. This is osom.studio.com/newsletter. If you watch this on YouTube, give us a thumb and subscribe to the channel. This means a lot to us. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Cheryl Salazar.
Hey everyone, it's good to have you here. We're glad you decided to tune in for this episode of the Awesome to Know podcast.
I was looking forward to this conversation because we are working a little bit in the same field, which is a lot of technology companies. And when we are working with them, what I find a case quite often is that their websites are lacking a little bit of there's too much features, they are feature heavy, and I have a feeling like, for example, consumer brands don't have that problem. They have it figured out it better way. So starting this conversation, I'm curious, what are your experiences in this matter, about communication for B2B tech companies?
That's a great question. And yeah, we face this problem every day. So, unlike consumer brands where there's demand, right? You're like, oh, I want a new pair of shoes. I'd like a new hat. I want an orange t shirt. You just
Orange
search.
t-shirt.
Yeah, that's why I called it out. That's easy to find and you just buy and off you go. But when you're in a B2B world, selling to other businesses, and especially in the technology space, what we find is technologists are really smart people. They understand how to build solutions and great solutions, but where they miss the point every single time is in how they translate that for the end customer in a way that the end customer can understand what it is they have to offer. And so with their websites, what I tend to find is they start with something that's pretty elementary. And then as they add features to the product, they're like, oh, we need a page that talks about that feature. And we need a page that talks about that feature. So the metaphor I like to use for that is, and we all have this problem, right? So you tidy up your cupboard. You're like, oh, my clothes are all tidy. They're all in a row. And after 6 months, it's a mess because you left your shoes on the floor. You didn't hang up your shirt and your closet or your cupboard is just a mess. That's what websites are like. So it requires discipline.
That's my cupboard. Yeah, I think you just described my cupboard.
Yeah, that's right. And we get pulled into a lot of website projects, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's grown all kinds of legs and nobody knows what anything is. And so imagine the poor end user. The end user is trying to figure out what it is you have to sell and they can't figure it out.
Do you know all of the moves? Like, you enter into a conversation and you like immediately see the patterns, the wrongdoings and so on. Is it screaming at you? Is it like how you feel when you start a cooperation with a new client?
Well, that's an interesting question. So often when I'm pulled into a new client engagement, sometimes I can get very intimidated because they're large tech companies. And I think, oh, they know what they're doing. Why are they asking me for help? And the moment you dive under the covers, oh my gosh, that's when you see all the mess. And I have learned over time, but this was through experience, to just tell them straight. There's a reason why they hired organizations like ourselves, right? They're leaning on us for the knowledge and the best practices to tell them what they need to do. So over time, I've become more straightforward with telling them what to do. Really, I I point out, I'm going to use a funny term here, I point out their warts and say, you have a whole lot of warts on your website. Here's kind of what needs to be fixed. The other thing I find they don't pay much attention to, which is where companies like yourselves are really an essential part of the process, is they don't think about the customer journey. Like they prop up a page, it's got all kinds of technical jargon on it. The end user, it's not in their language, so they might not understand what this is all about. I find, especially in the world of cloud, where it tends to be a very technical area, and technologists like to use a lot of tech heavy terms. Unless you're an IT manager, you don't understand what's on that page. So looking at your language, looking at your customer journey, are your calls to actions in the right place? Are you even looking at that data to know what to do with your calls to action? There's so many elements to take a look at that they might be missing.
Maybe this is like they are thinking, okay, we are only talking to we're only speaking to very technical people, like even maybe developers, right? Whereas this is entirely not the case, and they are like 2% of the whole population that is able to buy their products. So is it like coming from bad assumptions, or is it just they can help themselves? Like they can be like contained in that matter?
It's sometimes it's a combination of the two. Their excitement, I think, a lot, and it's a generalization, right? Maybe a lot of them don't understand who their buyer is. They think it might be IT, but what I find sometimes with selling to IT is they can feel very threatened when a technology savvy partner comes onto their patch, and now they're talking about this, these new tools or what it is. And that IT manager, let's face it, I would hate to be an IT manager in today's world because technology is moving so fast. And how can you possibly keep up with everything? So I think your IT manager can often feel threatened by a partner who's coming into their organization wanting to do all these things, thinking that their job might be replaced. So
Oh,
that's
that's
one thing.
interesting. So that they don't feel like empowered, but rather threatened.
Yeah, they can often feel threatened by the technology. So I think the IT manager role is evolving. Whereas in the past, they used to do a lot of the doing. I think today it's probably evolving to more, it's the oversight, it's the governance, making sure that the tools and technology are secure. So that role is completely changing, right? And if you just think about the SaaS world and the hundreds of thousands of tools available, how do you sift through all that information to find what you need? So no, I'm going to get off the IT manager. So they might
All right.
they might think that's the ideal customer profile, but what I tend to find is technology companies don't often take the time to understand who the real buyer is, and they struggle to articulate the value in business terms. So if they are selling to the C-suite and a business user, the content on the website completely misses the mark with that buyer. I find that more often than not, that's the problem.
Again, I'm thinking about where is it coming from, because you have all of the as the organization, you have all of the invoices, who bought what, right? What are the companies that are buying from you, and also you can trace the trace who from that organization is doing that. And then okay, you are selecting the C-suite, for example, and then there's like what I don't know, a canyon dividing you and the content you are producing. So what's the reason this is missing the mark? It like when I'm talking with you right now, it seems so obvious that you have to match, but maybe this is a question of this is so much more difficult to do in a way that the result is actually exactly speaking to the to that target group, in this case C-suite.
What I find is, these businesses tend to be moving really fast because with the cloud, things just happen so quickly, right? So They're moving fast. They don't often go back and look at the data. What I find and why we're successful is they don't often staff their companies with the right people. So I often find I might be working with half a marketing person. So somebody who's doing marketing and another job. And that person doesn't have the time to look at the data. So often we start that conversation as, well, let's look at your data. Who is doing the buying? And then, let's break it up into categories. Do we know the role? Do we know the company type? Then let's develop messaging to target more of the customers that are driving the revenue. And what are those customers? And so then we come down to what we call a messaging framework. So when we do messaging frameworks, say we're doing something for dairy farmers. Okay, so I'm selling to dairies, and I need to talk to the farm manager, maybe the quality person, and the supply chain person. I don't even know if that's a role in dairies, to be quite honest, but we'll just assume, you have to get hay, you have to get your milk picked up, you have to do all these things. Do you have messaging that covers all those personas? Oftentimes what we find is they will have a pretty good idea of one persona, but not all the other influential personas that might be looking for the solution and then telling the buyer what they want. So the buyer is not necessarily doing the research. It's often the user who's looking for the solution, who's trying to find what they need and is informing the buyer about what they want. So your messaging persona needs to cover multiple profiles within your desired customer.
So there's a person that has a problem and it's in their own interest to find a solution to that problem, but the sponsor of that solution is someone else and maybe another department. And then not only that person who found that solution has to be pretty sure this is your way to go, the target software, but then the whole buying department, right? And then so this is totally different story. How are the buying, let's say, the purchase, the procurement going to understand what they are even procuring, right?
Yeah, and I think procurement is coming down to it's, the validation of the solution, the security of it, the pricing, negotiating the price. I often tell clients you really need to focus on the user pain points. So understanding who your users are and what they're struggling with, that's where you have to target your solution. And then you produce different content for the procurement person. So that might be a pricing matrix, do you do small, medium, large? What does implementation look like? What does post-implementation support look like? So those are all things you build to address the person who's doing the buyer. And then just in response to something we spoke about a little earlier is often when the message is complicated and the end customer doesn't understand, they often ask their peers for recommendations. So those peers are always good sources of references. I'm like, hey, Mache, I'm trying to do this. Who do you use? And you're going to tell me, well, this is the solution we've used in the past. We hated it. We bought this one. We love it. So often those recommendations can be key to the buying process.
Yeah, this is also interesting because if you are that legendary word of mouth, right? So that coming with all of the consequences, like if you have a not very bad solution you hate, you will tell 10 people that you hate that solution, and you will be very like outspoken spokesperson against that tool. That's and so is your opinion like, if the correct messaging is missing from the site, that word of mouth is more prominent in selecting the proper software?
Good question. I don't know if I have any data to support that, but more of a gut feel. What we tend to find here in the US is, certain industries are very word of mouth strong. So one of that would be in every state, we have multiple counties, and the people who run the counties, they go to certain events and they meet other people from other counties in the state. I'm in the state of Washington. We maybe have, I don't know, I'm just going to guess 20 counties, right? So that is very much a word of mouth environment because they want to know, okay, you've solved this problem in your county. What did you do and how do you use it? Okay, I'm going to go find that same solution and do that in my county. So I would say it's more of a gut feel. I don't know that there's any data to support it necessarily in certain industries, but I do find with some of my clients, speaking about customer service specifically, it's how you treat your customers. And if they have a good experience with you, when they leave working with you, they will take you with them. So they might move to another company and say, oh, I really want to replace this tool. I'm going to use that same partner I worked with at the last company. So it's multifaceted. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what's my experience with you? What is the service? Were you sensitive to my needs when I needed help? And how did you fix my problem? I think regardless of what your website says, I think it comes down to customer service at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true for word of mouth totally, because you have to have the experience to share bad or good or bad, right? Regardless, that will be experienced. But this is interesting, and we covered slightly the messaging, and I would like to go deeper there because there is positioning and there is messaging, and and there is also branding. Like so. Can you walk us through a little bit more in the nuances of messaging and positioning, because I have a feeling it's sometimes confused. What's the role of both meanings?
Yeah, and some of it transcends the other, but branding is more like if you make statements, and I'm trying to think if I have a couple of statements, like we are a green company. We are energy efficient. We produce sustainable products. We are meeting carbon emissions. So that's part of my brand. But if I don't prove it to you, like I'm selling you something, you find that it's energy inefficient, I'm polluting the atmosphere, I've completely fallen flat out on my promises to you. So my branding is more my promises to you as a customer. I do these things, and we showed in the products we build, the people we hire, et cetera, et cetera. With messaging, it's messaging and positioning. It's more around who are you really serving? So if I'm going after small business and I'm trying to sell a product that's $10,000 a month, that is not a small business product. And you really have to think about in a small business, maybe you're dealing with solopreneurs, so single owner companies, 5 people, 10 people. They don't have the kind of budget to pay $10,000 a month for anything. So really understanding how they might buy, should they go on subscription, and then what products do they need most. So really honing your product to position it for a segment in the market. And then when it comes to messaging, it's, are you using a lot of jargon, or you really, I like to use this term, using the vernacular of the customer. So if I'm a bakery owner and you're going to sell me a CRM solution, it doesn't help me if that CRM solution talks about things like warehouses and warehouse managers and customer service reps. I want to know things like I need to manage my suppliers. I need to know where my flour is, so really articulating your message in the words of the customer, that resonates better with them. So that when it comes to messaging, really, really important.
What you mentioned is the exact thing that is very often missing from the websites. And you mentioned that you are doing I don't know, tidying up in your cupboard, and then 6 months later you can start from scratch. So there is that process that messes up everything again, right? So you create new features, and someone forgot how to write a proper copy about the problem that feature solves, and just pasted the name of that feature. And my experiences are when building a new website, we have to build a website and then find a place to do all of those slogans, promises, features, and definitions. And then we are observing the team, how the client team struggles to come up with those with a change, because the need for a new website, has arisen from some from website not meeting that need, right? And then we are starting to build a new website, and we are observing that the team struggling to make a difference this time, like to create a different website, and they face the same, like trying to go the same path, and we are trying to correct their azimuth. So how can you change that behavior in the organization that is rooted for such a long time in this feature oriented thinking, which is from the old times, let's say?
Yeah, and it is a struggle, especially today with algorithm marketing. Algorithm marketing is really throwing a challenge at everybody. Back in the old days being 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah,
Time
yeah,
flies.
yeah. Time flies. The best practice was you could write a web page that was 700 words long. Well, guess what? Users don't have the time to read your 700 words. And so now it comes down to really being concise with what you're trying to say. So what we lead with is, there's kind of your hero image with a statement. This is what we do for the industry we serve, right? You follow that with the three problems you are solving. So that's customer facing problems. Like, we're going to speed up your bank reconciliation. We're going to help you find your cash. We're going to integrate with e-commerce, whatever the three problem statements are. Then we tend to go down into, have we helped other people just like you? So testimonials, case studies. Sometimes with new technology, you won't have the case study to talk about. So often a use case can be really powerful there. So you're really showing the prospects in real terms 3 or 4 use cases where they can use that technology as it relates to their business. And then you might have a carousel or kind of a tab feature that really explains in more depth the feature and the benefit that this product gives. So this is my feature, 2 sentences about the benefits. So you're trying to keep it really crisp. Often video can address a lot of these issues we're facing. So we want to tell people all about our product, like so much about our product, but you maybe have a 90-second video that just conveys the essence of what your product does. So encourage people to think about video. And then you can always have a couple of downloads, data sheets for people who do want to read more or want to share it with somebody. And then you need to have a very clear process of how do you get started with somebody like me. Step 1, we will do a needs analysis. Step 2, we do this. Step 3, we do this. So that's kind of how we look at the page structure. But then you think about your content, right? So top of the funnel content tends to be very educational. It's things like ebooks and infographics and blogs and emails, blah, 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 blah. Then you're starting to, okay, so how do I take people from the top of the funnel and kind of move them down until I can get a sale? Well, then you start looking at things like case studies. There could be an online demo of your tool. And then you have a pricing matrix. So I find technology companies tend to hide their pricing. Either it's very competitive or they're reluctant to give it out. But that's what the person who's visiting your website is like, okay, I like the solution. What is the price? And we take great delight in hiding our price because we want people to call us. Well, people don't want to call you. They want to know, how much does it cost? Can I even afford this? Yes or no? Move along, So I find that's a big gap.
But this is also very interesting the need for hiding the pricing, because then you leave the data, get in touch with sales or book a demo, and there is a lot of arguments for having hidden pricing, because you might not qualify, right? So instead of like spending time of a sales rep doing a demo for you if you are not qualified, yeah, maybe the open pricing would disqualify you because you wouldn't in the first place reach out. But then there is a lot of argumentation going into the fact that without the human, let's say, help with a demo, live demo, or some kind of interaction with a sales rep that can advise, that person wouldn't convert because they don't see the value in the product. And I'm not digging deeper into whether this is a product problem or it's a difficult category or whatever, but there is that argumentation for hiding the pricing. We had hidden pricing for a long time, and right now we have again for a long time right now we have open pricing, because this disqualifies people who are not willing to spend certain amount of money with us.
Yeah, and you kind of have to figure out where you're going to lay your bets. I would say if you show the price, people are more likely to say, okay, it's kind of maybe a little bit more than I was anticipating. Yeah, if it's completely outrageous, you probably don't want that customer, and you don't want that customer to tie up your sales team. But if you're pretty close, they probably more likely will reach out and say, okay, let me watch this demo. Let me talk to the sales guy to see if it really warrants that extra investment. Or maybe I can work with them on a payment plan. So it could still potentially reel somebody in. What drives me crazy? It drives me crazy in the SaaS world. You want to buy a tool and you cannot talk to a human. You reach out them, please. I need some information. Can I talk to somebody? You absolutely nobody will give you a call back or anything. It drives me crazy. I'm like, I just have a simple question. Can I chat with your bot on your website? Some of them don't have bots, or the bot keeps responding but misses the mark. I really think it's a terrible user experience. It drives me crazy. There you go. That's what I had to say.
Yeah, very good. We've got that on record. Beware, guys. Beware if Cheryl
Yeah,
finds you. Yeah,
that's
but
right.
I speaking of bots, I have very recent, very good interaction with a bot via WhatsApp Messenger. It was a hotel which was deskless, so I was on my own. And the question I asked got replied immediately via the only form of contact, which was WhatsApp, and a consultant down the road when I digged deeper. But my open-ended questions were answered immediately, and they were correct. I was so much impressed. And you spoke about 2 years ago, old times 2 years ago. That was like a aha moment for me, even though I know about ChatGPT, and we use some of those tools, and but as a like consumer, different city, and so on, that was really like I was impressed. I was really impressed because I also used bots on other. I had to use bots on other services, and they were totally useless. They were just terrible, and that marvelous integrated with the management of the whole place. If I could use the storage room for my luggage, if my room is ready early, and so on. So amazing. It was amazing. Totally off topic, but it was amazing.
Yeah, and I think people really need to think through that experience. So you would use that again, right? But if I'm on your website and the bot is, I don't know if the bot's even doing anything, I will never come back, and I will tell all my friends, don't bother. Yeah,
Yeah,
and and I,
you want.
yeah, and I think I find it especially prevalent with SaaS companies. They're like, well, it's a $10 widget I'm selling you. I'm not going to support anybody for $10. Well, maybe I would pay more to get better service. Have you thought about that?
And that's the legendary enterprise tier, right? You've got those people helping you on board and implement your product, right? And there is always SSO coming in that plan too, right? So the only difference between like a pro, so third, I have that matrix like imprinted in my memory. There is like free tier, basic, then there is pro, and then most of the time there is enterprise, which only differs in the fact that you've got the human beings like priority support, you have SSO, you have users management, and like admin level privileges to manage the users, and that's basically it. And you have no pricing for that. There is always call sales for enterprise pricing details. For hosting, this is prevalent. We spoke about the bot agents, and I can't. I have to ask you, because this is a question I have for every of my guests recently. What about content and AI? What's the link here, and how you can use AI without burning you, or how you cannot use AI without burning you?
Yeah, it's a very topical question right now because I up until 2 months ago, I didn't really use any kind of AI. And then I'm currently doing a project right now where my client is heavily reliant on ChatGPT just for fundamental stuff. And what I've noticed is, every technology has its problem. Like with anything that spits out from ChatGPT, I see the same overuse of words that we see in the technology sector. It probably because it's on all our websites, and if we're referring to the website, it's just giving us back what's on the website. So it's kind of interesting in that it's exposing some of the issues technology partners are having on their website. Everything is explore and navigate, and I'm like, these are terms that are overused. So that's pretty interesting. I would say it has been a really good help for those moments where you're kind of just stuck. It sounds like it's really simple to write an email. It is really simple to write an email, but there comes a time in your day where you're like, I just can't think of what to say. I think that's a great tool to use. What do you say? I have a client, what he does, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting use case. He had to write a blog on a very specific topic, but he didn't have time to sit down and write it. So he recorded it and he ran it through the paid version of ChatGPT. And he's like, wow, I got quite a good outcome. So it was still original content that he created, but ChatGPT could then take that content and put it in a format that made sense. So I thought that was a great use case. And then another client of mine, we're doing some work with him on Google paid ads through our mutual partner. And we needed to create a matrix comparing different products with each other. And instead of taking several hours to sit down with his team to get the brain dump from all of them and put it on the whiteboard and figure out what they were going to say, he basically plugged in the URLs of the competitor website and said, build me a matrix that focuses on this product for this segment, featuring, outlining where these products are similar or different. And literally, Mache, within 30 seconds, we had a table that we could use. So then we sat down with that table, and then the team had something to work with. So instead of spending a day trying to figure it out and wonder, they had some tangible data they could use and then say, okay, we believe this statement might be misleading. Let's clean that up. And so that was a really great use of a tool like ChatGPT.
I think this is something that it was meant to be like a great starter, because instead of like people taking this too far and are replacing all of the creative juices with chat GPT juices, and if you use that to set up something for a starter for a team, this is totally different story. You just don't do the heavy lifting. You fine tune and polish something that someone else, in that case ChatGPT, dug from under the under the earth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and kind of the analogy is, if you remember the days when we went to automated voice on phones, right? And this is probably 20 years ago. I don't know how many years ago, but it was very frustrating that you couldn't actually speak to a person. You had to press a number and press another number. And then eventually you're
the
like,
whole
where am
tree.
I in this? Yeah, in this tree. I just want to talk to a human. It's a little bit like that. I think we are all smart enough to spot the AI driven content. At the end of the day, we have to remember we want to deal with people. We are people, and people work best with people. Like, yep, the bot is great in certain circumstances, but I want to buy from somebody. If I have a problem, I want to know who I'm going to choke. It's like, I need to talk to the person who sold me this thing and he needs to fix it. I can't talk to a bot. I think that's where we
That's why SaaS companies are setting up bots for this sake, so that and you have no one to choke actually.
That's right. Yeah. That's why, like, we're just, hide behind all of this. But I think that's an important thing to remember is we like to work with people and we want to buy from people we trust.
Yeah, I think this is a great statement. I think we can pull it as one of the like highlights from this conversation, because this is there is so much push towards automation of different tasks that people are diving so deep into the AI that they are overusing this, and they're like it's like a tool every kid is using now, and it's so obvious that this is the case. And yeah, and there are certain words that are overused by, as you mentioned, by any like text generator, and I see them and I just, I know no one uses those words, and they are just, generated, and I'm like, okay, I can move on. I can move on,
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
from there.
Yeah. And you know what I would love to see more of in our field is, some people do a great job on their website. They use different colors. They might use a mascot. Their terminology is a little bit cheeky. So you enjoy reading the copy. I think where we all get stuck is we feel like we can't bring humor to our work because the person reading our content might not appreciate it. So I would love to see more people just using puns and humor in their copy, because I think that keeps people on site and engages them.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, but that's a huge struggle with the B2B companies. Like, I don't know. I have a feeling that if you think of a tech company, and if it is not like a SaaS startup, with that promise of rapid breaking and everything, but if you have an established B2B business in tech space, it's like either that very like rapidly moving SaaS platform, or a little bit sad office like company outlook type of company, and this is like hard to fight, because we are providing so refined solution to our reverend clients and so on, that it's like this way of being very, very stiff, because our clients are, I don't know, maybe stiff, coming from very stiff industries. So we saw that thinking, if you are that B2B, I don't know, software vendor and work with very stiff sector, you are like that sector. And you just suck this stiffness, and there is no way of being a little bit fun. But maybe this is what is working. Like very like serious people reading serious websites. It's clicking.
Yeah, I mean, there is a point to that. I think we all fall into that trap. And I find people tend to take more risk if they're selling to small businesses. And by risk, I mean they'll use bolder colors, they'll use copy that's a little bit more engaging. And they'll just have fun, right? And I think small businesses that resonates really well. But if, to your point, if I'm selling to other enterprises, they're like, oh, we don't appreciate that kind of thing. I think that certainly holds true. Yeah.
And also you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation that you were also like stressed, intimidated by those big organizations, and then you see under the hood and okay, there is a reason we are talking, right? And maybe this is like a bit of an imposter syndrome.
Yeah, certainly. And what I tend to find is a lot of companies, they grow by acquisition. So now you've got all these disparate teams, you're trying to drive cohesion. And then just thinking about the website, and this is how we got connected, right? Building global websites and bringing teams together. And how do you get it? And teams and cultures and languages? It is not an easy thing to solve. And your website is kind of your calling card. I mean, people, that's the first place they go to check you out. So, and it's not something you solve in 6 months. I think it's something you iterate over time. But I think there needs to be, certainly in my experience, good oversight and people who are web savvy. I find often there's no web savvy person anywhere in the conversation. Somebody who's looked at the journey, who's really deep in the trenches. They almost say, well, we'll find a vendor and they have to figure it out. So then the problem sits with you and you don't always have control over the problem.
We talked a little bit about the problems we are facing when visiting such websites, and what are the three most obvious problems you always look for when starting a new cooperation or the company is making like.
It's a good question. If we're talking specifically websites, like I see a lot of the websites that look the same. I would love to see some original photography, some original pictures. I see the same stuff over and over and over again. I see the same types of copy. I think in our space, a lot of the big software publishers will push out web copy and the partner organization will take it without customizing it. So a lot of the content is duplicated across different organizations. So they haven't taken the time to do that. And people don't put much on their About Us page at all. And I look at that, I'm like, that's your second most important page on your website is About Us. Because we want to know, who are these people? Do I know any of them? Do they have the same interests as me? What do they look like? And there are a couple of reasons for that. But I think one of them we just need to move on, because they say, well, if I put my staff out there, somebody's going to poach them. Well, if they're unhappy, they're going to leave anyway. But
There's LinkedIn for that. There's LinkedIn for poaching. Wow.
Yeah. But it's like, show who you are. It's like, and I have a client who does a really great job. And I've known them for years, and they became a client maybe 8 or 9 months ago, and they function very much like a family. They really feel like they are a family, and that's what I've always known about them. A couple of times a year, they shut the whole company down. They put a note on their website that says, we're cruising to Alaska. Our whole company is out of the office. If you need support, here's our knowledge base. That's what they do. Then they go on retreats all together, and they really are like a family, and they become, that's part of their branding. Back to branding. So when you deal with them, somebody is going to respond to you, right? I might not be the one, but I'm going to say, hey, can you get back this client today? And so that delivers a really great customer outcome. And that comes through on that About Us page, and they live it, they show it, and they display that behavior with their customers. And so that's positioning, branding, messaging, all in one on an About Us page.
Amazing example. That's actually amazing example of also very bold move. making it so prominent, even you nearly shut down your website, because then as a customer, okay, who is going to respond to my kind email and kind inquiry, right? So it's like that's why I'm saying this is a bold move, because it is also a signal for the customer that these guys will be at some point throughout the year unresponsive, right? So if I need something, that they are not there.
And they've trained their customers that that's what they do, and the customers appreciate it. They're like, wow,
Yeah.
I wish my company would do that.
Yeah. So this is also great that they accustom their customers for this action. Depending on the software, maybe this is totally fine. But I love this story. I love
Yeah.
the example.
Yeah. And that also, you build good software where you don't always need support. You have to start
Yeah,
with building good software. Yep.
you can create some messaging around that we can afford to go to Alaska for, I don't know, let's say a week, because our software is stable and you won't notice.
That's right.
I love it. We've been talking also about the About Us page, and this is something. This is very interesting, because this is a second page I visit when a customer reach out to us for anything. Like, so I want to understand who am I dealing with, and then obviously I see I'm trying to figure out who is the person in the organization or org chart and so on. So that About Us page is like neglected. People there, I think there's a lot of advice on the internet about no one cares about who you are. You have to solve the problem for the customer, and then there is organization which is an anonymous nearly organization, because you can't read anything about the background on that company, or there is like a half a page, half a screen page, tiny page. So this is interesting insight also.
Yeah. It makes me, it begs the question, what are you hiding? You're hiding something, and I want to know what that is. Do I really trust you? Hmm.
And I'm guilty of it too, because when I was on one of WordCamps, which are WordPress conferences, and I talked with a fellow agency owner, and it was in Vienna, and we had like an hour long conversation about life. We visited the same places by accident in Asia and so on. So I had really like interesting conversation, totally not about business, but rather similar experiences we shared. He spent like, I don't know, a couple of years in India doing voluntary work. So interesting stuff. And then he shared like next day when we met for the conference, he shared like, Maciej, I looked up your website, and if we didn't talk the day before, you looks like a bogus organization. I don't know even if there is anyone else apart from you, because on
Ah,
your About Us page, it's like very short info. And I thought that there is no picture of team members, and I thought, okay, this is interesting perspective, because we had team members on the page, but we thought, there is no point in showing them, and because who cares, right? And we have to manage the agreements to use the pictures and so on. So we got rid of that. And then someone comes with a feedback, Maciej, Awesome Studio looks like a bogus website, right? So, and I was shocked, really. I was shocked. And we changed that after that, because of that feedback.
So I have another example that happened in the last month. So my client installed some like tracking information on the website. Those tools that expose the domain of who's been on your website and what they've explored. And a specific organization went through his team members in detail. So we're trying to land some new logos for a specific software product, and it's a very challenging exercise. So we're always looking for clues. Who might be looking? What are they looking for? How do we get these new logos? And this company that was on their website went through all the team members, read all the bios of the team members for that product, and then called them up because that's what they wanted. This prospect wanted to know which team he was going to deal with that specific product. So I would even encourage people to really look at bios closely. Like you might want to say, like we sell a lot into the accounting space. It's where we do a lot of our work. So things like CPA qualifications are really important because accountants like to buy from accountants, people who really understand their day job, right? So looking down to the qualification level, whether it's technical, .NET, ASP, whatever those languages are that you might understand, to business qualifications, all of that is relevant.
I recorded one of the recent episodes with Adam Robinson, and I'm bringing this example because you mentioned about that software that tracks the domain level, so organization level visitors. He is building a tool that tracks a person level visitor, so exact person based on a lot of cookies and so on. But this is like a person level tracking, which might be interesting for your customers if they are using software like that.
Yeah, interesting, but at the same time, it feels very invasive. So, I mean, we all want that information, right? Like, I want to sell to you because you've been on my website. But if you're under Awesome Studio, I don't know who to call. So we all want that information, but I think we have to really develop the right approach in how do you reach out with me without me getting freaked out that you're like, oh, now that feels like privacy lines are starting to blur, but we all want the tool. So how do we
Yes, but
handle it?
at least with big supermarkets and stores, this is like for tens of years. They know your, I don't know, you private,
Purchasing,
so
yeah.
much private. Yeah, and there are those like remarkable stories how they were able to, based on the purchases, like track down a person to like a person level, and send out a package of, I don't know, free goodies for a lady who was pregnant and was expecting a baby. And this was like, I read about this a couple of years ago, and this was called, like, it was known for tens of years with all of the big data, let's say. But we are talking about like 90s or maybe 80s. I don't really remember how the initiatives to hide this information so that this is not so like shockingly accurate are for example, the newspapers that are distributed, like those collaterals, paper collaterals, are saturated with totally irrelevant items, like, I don't know, grass movers or tools, so that you think this is random stuff that you find exactly in a need right now.
Yeah, and that's a great example of how do you handle that. So if I know Mache was on my website and he's looking at something very specific, then sending that direct mail piece, like the box of goodies for a pregnant woman, I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. And guess what? I'll go back to the store because that's how they treated me. So I think that's where I come back to. It's how you handle that information. There'll be a lot of bad actors who'll just start calling and harassing you, but the firm who takes the time to really think about that experience they're trying to develop, I think that will be the winner.
On one hand, it will be more and more like prevailing because of the AI, because of the like ease with which it will be possible to track person level activities, or better understanding of the behavior, or even maybe ideas for different activities. At the same time, it will be worse and worse, with more people calling, with irrelevant stuff, with more mass mailings, all automated, because it's so much cheaper. The landscape changes and everything has to adapt with countermeasures too. So there is a new way of cheaper ways to do something, and then the countermeasures are being developed to to mitigate that side effects, let's say.
Yeah. So I don't know if this was really happened in your part of the world, but back when AOL was trying to get customers, we used to remember the CD-ROMs we used to get like every day in the mail with the CD-ROM from AOL. Sign up. Here's your like.
What was on that disk?
I don't know. I never put it in my computer because at that time I don't know what kind of I wasn't an AOL customer. I don't even remember. Maybe it was Hotmail. So I never used it, but we got them in the thousands.
Wow, that's amazing. Never heard about it. But it's as an app? I don't know. Terms of contract?
Well, it was in the days when, Yahoo, Hotmail, AOL were all trying to win American consumers over to their email platforms. And that's how they were marketing to customers or prospects to get them on the AOL platform. But yeah, I didn't bite. But it reminds me of those days where there was just like excessive marketing for what essentially is a free inbox, right? But I guess if you get a lot of customers, then you have millions that you can then sell those users to somebody else. It's different. Hopefully we won't go back to those days.
I think we are in those days, but in different, let's say these are just different flavor. Yeah, we don't notice. It's not so obvious, but it's obviously happening. Just the tools are different, less screaming in your face.
More insidious now.
Oh yeah, I would say I would agree. All right, Cheryl, thank you so much for the conversation. I know you have to run very very soon, so I really appreciate our conversation. I enjoyed it very very much, and I hope our listeners had a chance to grab a piece of or two of advice and make their websites better based on this conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to join you. It's been fun.
Thank you. See you maybe next time, and take care.
If you like what you've just heard, don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. On the other hand, if you've got a question we haven't answered yet, feel free to reach out to us directly. Just go to awesomestudio.com/contact. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode of the Awesome to Know podcast.